Hello and welcome. Today we begin with the latest updates from a deadly turmoil in Tanzania. The protests that erupted after a contentious election in the country seem far from over. Instead, they have now split into Tanzania's neighbouring country, Kenya. The border town of Namanga witnessed violent unrest, with Kenyans alleging that the Tanzanian police targeted them. The police allegedly lobbed tear gas canisters across the border and fired live ammunition. The videos from the area showed protesters scattering in panic as tear gas and echoes of gunshots filled the air, leaving behind the injured person they were carrying. Later, the security forces were seen dragging a body away from the protest site.
We have a challenge of protests from the Tanzanian side, and we ourselves do not have protests. We do not want protests at all. If they want protests, they should take it to Tanzania. But the Tanzanian police are wrong, because why would they lob tear gas from the Tanzanian side to Kenya? That is wrong.
We have a problem because one of us has been shot, and we do not know why they are shooting at us. When Tanzanians fight us, we Kenyans do not have a problem with them. Why are they shooting at us in our area?
Back in Tanzania, where the protests initially started, hundreds of young citizens could be seen gathering in groups in the commercial capital Dar es Salaam for a third day on October the 31st. The protesters torched rubble and tore down posters of Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan. The stir that followed an election with no opposition has reportedly killed 2 people so far, while the opposition claims that the death toll has reached around 700. This as an internet shutdown, a curfew and deployment of the military remain in place. And as the government's crackdown on protesters continues, the Tanzanian military chief called the protesters criminals.
Dear Tanzanians, you all remember that some people went to the streets on October 29th and committed criminal acts. These are criminals. And the criminal acts should be stopped immediately.
The Hassan-led government is facing widespread criticism for its crackdown on protesters. The Human Rights Watch accused the Tanzanian authorities of suppressing the political opposition and critics of the ruling party. The massive uproar is against the election in which incumbent President Hassan is slated to win, since all her opponents were either jailed or barred from running. The unrest has also disrupted cross-border trade operations with Kenya, leaving traders and travellers stranded in both nations. But even as the crackdown continues, will the authorities be able to quell the dissent? And will that mark a significant chapter of change in Tanzania's history? That remains to be seen. And for more on this, we have with us Nerima Wako, who is an executive director of the Siasa Place and a political analyst from Nairobi. Thank you ever so much for joining us, Nerima.
Thank you.
Let's first look at the significance of these protests, but violence spreading across the borders now into neighbouring countries. How significant is that for regional stability?
First, our hearts are with Tanzanian citizens exercising their democratic right to protest. No one should face violence or digital repression for demanding fair elections. And what we're witnessing in Namanga is more than just a border disturbance. It's a human and democratic crisis that's spilling across borders when citizens are actually fleeing violence and when internet shutdowns are now not only affecting one country, but another. So it shows how interconnected our continent is and our countries are. And so Namanga's situation shows how authoritarian responses don't respect borders. When you talk about tear gas canisters, you talk about digital shutdowns, the economic disruption is real. These are small traders, these are truck drivers, these are hospitality workers who are losing income and the right to work and to move freely under the East Africa Commission framework. So while we look at this, also we have to understand that Tanzania is the fourth largest economic partner with Kenya. So it's an interdependence in trade and digital infrastructure.
Yes, and Narima, let's build on those relations between Kenya and Tanzania. If this action along the border continues, how do you see that influencing relations between the two countries, and what could Kenya's response be?
At the moment, our President Ruto is actually the chair of the EAC. What we've been seeing is absolute silence. Remember, you mentioned previously that the opposition, there is none. And we also know that Tundu has been in prison as well. And there's also been actions in Uganda where we've seen opposition, Kezia Besigye, abducted from Nairobi. So it's questioning our partnership, it's questioning our solidarity. What we're seeing is young people, citizens, vocal online, calling for solidarity to stand on democratic rights. But the institutions that are supposed to uphold these democracies are silent. We're also questioning where is the African Union in regards to this situation and what is our president going to say since he is the head of the EAC at the moment. So our relations at the moment tense, and it looks like it's a battle between governments that are led by authoritarian regimes and the people who are fighting to be heard and their voices to be heard.
Yes, Narima, for my final question, I want to build on that point that you made once again. Of course, as you referenced, protests post-election happening across the African continent, not just the African Union. I want to look broadly at international actors as well. What do you think needs to be done to stop this pattern that we're seeing and, of course, stop the potential bloodshed that's at play?
Unfortunately, Africa doesn't receive as much attention as the rest of the globe. We can't even forget what's happening at the moment in Sudan in regards to RSF. There's been a lot of lives lost, and it's unfortunate that now action is being taken. So for this particular instance, I would say that we have to focus on our institutions, our African governments, because it's young people who are calling on them to be accountable. Remember, the rise of these protests is pushing for fair elections, is pushing for accountable leadership and accountable governance. So young people understand that this is where we need to put our energy on, and our issues are our problems, and for us to solve as our solutions. Hopefully we can get some media attention, but when it comes to institutions and governments, they are focused on other countries since there are also several wars happening simultaneously right now.
Narima Wako, thank you ever so much for your time and for your insight as well.
Citizen TV, Accra, Ghana. Citizen TV, the citizen's power.